Oh shit, here we go again.
This is Piratoos, an open-world adventure pirate game that we've been developing for over a year now. Well, that sounds bland, right? We prepared something extra. The twist is active ragdolls. It's been over 3 months since the last video, so I thought it was the great time to catch up. So, what's new? Well, honestly, a lot have happened. Let's get serious, cause we are talking about the active ragdolls now. And we made a horrible mistake. What was it? We set the initial world scale quite too big in the beginning, and by the time we noticed it, it was already too late. So, if the player is big and everything around him is also big, so what's the difference, you may ask? Well, the distances and the forces we apply to the bodies are also quite large numbers. And since we are making a physics game, we also need some precision in physics calculations. And if the bodies are moving at greater speeds, it can cause an unwanted behavior. To solve it, we ramped up the physics engine's fixed time step, which basically sets more precision for the physics engine. But changing this value was a horrible mistake. Ultimately, we decided to take the time and fix the world scale to normal. It sounds simple, but it took us around a month to fix everything right. I mean, every force, every distance threshold, and every particle had to be scaled down as well. And we did it. And everything was working fine, until we placed around 15 ragdolls in this scene and we noticed that the performance was dropping at an exponential rate. And remember this bad boy that we changed to solve our problems in the first place? Well, we forgot to reset the value to default. So we reset the value back to normal, and the ragdoll, it wasn't working anymore. And we had to fix everything once again. Just a simple rookie mistake. The wrong world size. And honestly, this horror story has a good ending. Just look at the performance on the Steam Deck. Making an active ragdoll game can be challenging, so we are always researching other successful ragdoll games. The key thing that we noticed is that the input has to be very responsive, especially in the combat. I'm not sure if you can notice, but our last iteration of Ragdoll was very clumsy and difficult to control, especially in the tighter places. Even in this video, it is visible that you had to be very gentle with your input. We fixed it, but the Ragdoll lost some chaotic quirkiness, and we think that it's a fair trade-off, cause after some time playing, this quirkiness and jankiness in the controls can become very frustrating. Aside from that, we also made some cool stuff as well. Ragdolls can do various tricks, which can be quite fun. What can it do? A flip! Well, honestly, it has no real use, but it gives you style, which is important. I mean, just look at him. He's so stupid, but also cool. Human Fall Flat is one of the best active ragdoll games which has a puzzle platforming design. We took lots of inspiration from that successful example. Puzzles there are very simple and fun, and all the mechanics are very intuitive. However, one thing we find missing is climbing the wall mechanic. And we had the climbing mechanic coded before. It wasn't too bad, but we decided to make it more intuitive and more fun. Well, to start with, we first needed to implement a proper grabbing mechanic. And it works like this. You grab the wall with both hands, then pull up, release one hand, stretch it above, and grab the wall with the other arm. Once you get into the flow, it becomes really satisfying. While playtesting the climbing mechanic, I accidentally found the faster way to climb. Instead of grabbing one arm at a time, you use the momentum of pulling up and then releasing both hands at the right time. Here's a comparison of both climbing techniques. I found this discovery quite amazing, cause physics games mostly are just about that, finding different solutions using your creativity. Also, we made another cool mechanic that is worth mentioning, the pole swing. It has some features on its own, like you can move through the pole sideways, which is not that cool, but mechanically quite responsive and satisfying. You can swing, of course, and you can also overswing. And most importantly, swing, jump. And I think that is it with the platforming mechanics. Alright, heads up, I have some important stuff. First of all, we made the game's website. There is a link in the description if you want to check it out, but I think it came out to be pretty cool. Of course, since the game is not yet announced, it is still lacking bits of information. However, we already started looking for playtesters, so if you want to be part of it, you can simply join on the game's website. We also have our Discord community, which is growing quite fast, so if you want to be up to date, the link is in the description as well. And one more cool thing. Your comments. Since the last video, we had so many comments throughout our social media platforms that we decided to make a comment wall. Thank you for your support and nice words. The comment wall expanding each week, and it motivates us to push even further. Well, we made a lot of progress there, starting with the Harbor Island. Harbor Island is sort of a save house where the player keeps coming back to upgrade their ship, turn in quests and pick up new adventures. We have some major buildings there like a shipyard, forge, sawmill, fisher's hut, merchant, tavern and so on. They are still in the works, but let me show you around. First up, the shipyard. It's a building where you will be preparing your ship. The shipyard has two main buildings where all the tools and materials are stored, mostly for the visual appeal. Also, it is worth mentioning that every harbor building comes with its special NPC character. And for the shipyard, we have Greta. Next up, we have a forge, which is just below the mountain. The forge is a building where the player can refine the metal resource. To begin with, you need to fill the bowl with metal ores or parts, so there is something to melt. We also have this big furnace and bellows. The player needs to jump on top of the bellows to boost the fire and start the melting process. For the forge, we have a gorilla named Jeb. He looks upset, but honestly, he's a friendly guy. Next up is the merchant. This is where we have some footage of modeling process. We initially thought that the merchant could have a different structure than the rest of the harbor buildings, so we went with a simple tent. Well, the modeling process is quite straightforward. We use the same wood textures and beams for the structure, and for the tent itself, we have a high poly mesh for baking the textures. In the beginning, it looked a bit empty. However, once we added all the items, carpets and stuff, it instantly started to look cozy and more lively. And as for the merchant, we have Clara Goldtooth. She's one of the large cats. We thought we could leave it as a nice Easter egg. Could you figure it out? Also, a small fisherman's hut. We had a couple of sketches, however, this one was for our Discord community to decide. And the boat hut design got the most votes. For now, it still doesn't have any use, cause there is no fishing activity yet. However, we have plans for the future. Another thing worth mentioning is the lighting of the scene. Getting great lighting with Unity can be tricky and requires technical knowledge. Piratoos has a day and night cycle, and honestly, it makes the scene lighting question even more difficult. Real-time global illumination. This method seems to be the best for our case. However, we had the challenge of setting up the light probes. To make this process faster, we are using the asset which I left in the description. And honestly, I think it looks great. Here is the comparison between the standard Unity lighting and the real-time global illumination. In the last video, I shared some footage of the combat that we made throughout the development. However, we completely got rid of almost everything combat related. It's because of the rework of the Ragdoll. Our last iteration of combat wasn't too good. It lacked visual feedback, depth and dynamics. As for now, we only have a couple of attacks that don't require any weapon. One of them is a slide attack. It doesn't do much damage, cause it's more intended to counter the enemy attack. Second attack is the slingshot. You grab the ground and start charging the attack. This attack does quite some damage, however, for the moving enemy it is a bit tricky to land, but once you do, it does some nice damage. We also made visual feedback once the damage was inflicted, a small highlight on the material and a simple hit particle effect. Slingshot attacks could also be used on the structures as well, and I think it's quite satisfying. Moving on with the combat, we decided not to rush with the coding the enemy AI, but properly test the whole combat in PvP split screen mode. This way we will know if what we have for the attacks is enough and could be used on an agent. We did some testing and it was quite fun to just fight in PvP mode, so here's some footage of us fighting in PvP mode. Combat is of course still in early stage and is quite lacking. We are still working on balancing and different abilities, but it starts coming together. Making an open world game takes a lot of time, and honestly our first iteration might not have the open world infrastructure yet. We still have a lot of systems to work on, and I think that wraps it up. And one more thing, if you are interested in the game, join the playtesters on the game's website, and also don't forget the Discord community. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.